Hi there, I'm Teri Hart. Have you heard about aging in place? It is very popular and it's exactly what it sounds like. You stay where you're living until you die. Today, we are joined by President and CEO of Baycrest Hospital and Apotex Center Jewish Home for the Aged, Deb Galet, about helping seniors live safely and independently at home. Welcome to the heart of it all. I am Teri Hart. This episode is full of information that virtually all Canadians are interested in, so you will want to share it with your friends and family. Wherever you're listening, just click that share button. And while you're at it, give us a follow and comment. It really does help. Around 85% of Canadians overall prefer to age in place. And this preference increases with age. Check out this number. 96% of those aged 65 or older say they would rather remain in their homes as they age. So how do we do it? That's what we're talking about today. There's no doubt our homes are important to us, and Capital Direct's FlexiLine is structured to allow you to borrow money from your home's equity and pay it back when the time is right. A flexi line can help support you and your family in moments where they need you the most. Visit capitaldirect.ca to find out more. You may have heard this. My dad said it. They'll have to take me out feet first. Actually, many seniors say it about their homes. And maybe it's about not wanting to go to a retirement community or a long term care facility, but whatever the reason, being able to age in place takes careful planning. And our guest today knows all about it. Deb Galet started her career as an occupational therapist across various clinical environments, including community care. Now, with 25 years of experience in healthcare, she leads seniors care programs that directly support older adults across the care continuum, giving her insight into what it takes to help seniors live safely and independently at home. Currently, Deb is president and chief executive officer of Baycrest Hospital and Apotex Center Jewish Home for the Aged. Deb Galet, welcome so much to the heart of it all. We are thrilled to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
You started your career as an occupational therapist. I just mentioned that. And I have to tell you, I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit that I'm not really sure I fully understand what an occupational therapist does and how somebody with that skill set can help somebody age in place. Please help me understand.
Absolutely. So, occupational therapy is a regulated health profession. Most people confuse it sometimes with physiotherapy because there's a little bit of inter overlap, I should say. But OT, as it is commonly called, is a healthcare profession. And it helps people of all ages regain, develop, or maintain the skills needed for daily living, working, or playing after an illness, injury, or disability, or in this case, with aging. So we use customized interventions and environmental modifications to help people with their independence in tasks that are important to them. And it's a very individualized approach because what's meaningful to each individual person is different. That's what we do. So when it talks about something like aging in place, it's going to be very different for someone who is, in their 80s, is walking independently and is living in a house with stories and is starting to think about how do I modify my environment because I want to stay in this, or it's a person who's had a spinal cord injury for 40 years and they also want to be aging and already live in a completely wheelchair accessible environment. And so it always starts with an assessment of the person.
I I rhymed off some statistics in the intro, and it just jumps out at you that people who are 65 and older, 96% of them, Deb, 96% of Canadians 65 and older want to age in place. Like, wow, what a number. Why do you think that that is so important to our senior community?
So I have two elderly parents, so I have some firsthand experience, but also in my career. I think if we look at this population, the baby boomers, they've worked so hard to get their homes. Like, if you think about where they were as children versus where they are now as adults and into the retirement age, they don't want to leave their home. They want agency over where they live and what they get to do with their time. I think also when we look back at historically them having cared for their aging parents, it was a different time. Our institutions were different. Nursing homes were different. There weren't the same number and type of retirement homes and the same focus on meaningful living. And so I think it also comes with an understanding from their lived experience as to this isn't something I want, having seen my parents gone through it. The reality is it's a different time and a different place. But it is still really important to understand that if they want to stay at home, then they want to stay at home. And how can we as a society support that? How can our community and our healthcare system support that? And our tax benefits support that to be able to create that as opposed to encouraging everybody to move into an institution.
I love that idea of really listening to people as they age instead of marginalizing them. So, what do people get wrong about aging in place, about the idea of aging in place?
I think the lack of planning. And so I think I read once that death is called the uncomfortable truth, that it's going to happen, but we don't like to think about it. Therefore, we don't talk about it. And I think aging is the other one. And I liken the two, right? Because if you're not aging, the alternative is and so I just had a big birthday, and so everyone's asking me, "What do you think about it?" And I think it's great. I think aging is great, and it's an honor to be able to do it and to do it in a healthy way, and I think we need to think about what are those next steps, and so I would say the biggest problem is people don't actually think about that they're going to age, and age comes with some changes to our body in terms of our mobility and our strength. And it's a different time period in our lives. If you know that saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. That's what happens in terms of our physical abilities. It's not like we can put it on a shelf when we're in our 20s, and then a couple years later we're like, oh, I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to get back in shape, and it takes a week or two when we get back at it. It's not the case as we get older. So there has to be a really big focus on maintaining our physical abilities, and planning our physical environments to be able to adapt for our inevitable decline in our physical abilities. And I'll tell you, Terry, I read a statistic the other day or a predictor the other day, and I thought it was fascinating. And it said, in your fourth decade of life, if you're between the age of your 40s and your 50s, as a man, if you are able to farmer carry your body weight, so that means take your body weight, divide it by two, and carry that weight one in each hand. So, for example, a man who is 200 pounds has to carry a weight of 100 pounds in each hand, walking around for a minute. If you can do that as a male between your 40th and 50th year of life, it predicts that in your last years of life, you can independently open a jar. That is how our bodies will decline if we are lucky to age. And so we need to understand that and plan for it.
There are most people who are listening to this as a podcast. I just want to describe my reaction to what Deb just said. I am slack jawed. Slack jawed.
Can I add, Terry, that that's just our physical decline. We also have to think about our cognitive decline. And what are the mechanisms? What are the things that we can do to prevent cognitive decline or the onset of an Alzheimer's and a dementia? And that's a lot of the research that we're doing here at Baycrest. And it's a really big focus because when we talk about aging in place, we can age in place in our own homes with an abundance of support. One of the biggest reasons for admission to a long-term care facility, a nursing home or retirement home, is the cognitive decline. And so if we can prevent that or push that out a number of years, that's another mechanism that we need to pay attention to. That's something else that we need to focus on in order to be able to have agency over where we age. And so there's a whole body of research now that's looking at how do we prevent a dementia or an Alzheimer's. We know some things for certain. We know that hearing impairment can lead to a dementia. If you're likely predisposed to it, it's the having a hearing impairment and not doing anything about it can increase your feelings of social isolation. And so there's a cascade from that effect. So things like wearing a hearing aid if you have a hearing impairment, that's important. Decrease social isolation, that's important. But we also know that physical activity is important, both for the maintaining of your physical status, but also for your cognitive status. And so how much physical activity, our diets, those are preventable, specific things that we're looking at, preventable modified risk factors that we're continuing to research to determine what is the best advice that we can provide people in order to also slow down a cognitive decline.
So you just covered so much there, from our physical to our cognitive. So let's start getting into the brass tacks of aging in place and what it means for a dwelling. Are there common design trends today that actually work against aging in place? Is there something that we can be looking at not doing to make our dwelling more possible to age in place?
It's a great question. I think the biggest issue with aging in place is stairs. Front entrance stairs means that if you have trouble getting in and out of your home, especially in our Canadian winters, that can be problematic. Especially if, in case of an emergency, you need to flee, that's problematic. But also, in so I live in Toronto, and in many areas in Toronto, the houses are all very similar in that on your first floor, kitchen, living room, dining room, and then stairs up or down to a bathroom. And so not having a washroom on your main floor necessitates multiple ish times that you would need to go up and down the stairs. And so putting in a first floor powder room, and I actually like to say, I would put in a full bathroom on the first floor if we could. And I know that doesn't match design features, but it then future proofs your home that should you need to create a master bedroom on the main floor, you have access to a washroom right there. And so I think the biggest design flaw is the stairs, especially in the tall, skinny homes that we're seeing in order to increase the density of our homes because of our housing crisis. I think the least popular choice for people is often condos because they're so small, but they are wheelchair accessible. So this concept about planning in advance is really important.
Walk us through your must-haves for bathrooms. So grab bars, raised toilets, walk-in showers. What truly makes a difference? Are those three things that I just mentioned essentials?
I think walk-in showers are key. Walk-in showers that are big enough to also put a chair in, so that you can sit down while you're having a shower. So a walk-in shower, I like handheld showers as well, so that if someone needs to help you with bathing, but also something that you can sit down on. Tile that isn't slippery is also very important. And often when we talk about walk-in showers, some people insist on putting that lip, that little thing that you have to step over. But if you think about someone recovering from a knee or a hip injury, there's no reason why your walker couldn't come into the shower with you, but not if there's a lip, right? So this concept of completely on the same grade, for that, that's really important.
So grab bars?
Yeah, grab bars are important. Where they're placed are important as well. And so um, a right-handed person versus a left-handed person. I had an opportunity a couple of years ago to go tour a long-term care home that had just recently been built, and it was a beautiful place. And they used modular bathrooms, so all the bathrooms were the same. So they all had a grab bar on the right side of the toilet, and the toilet was closer to the wall. And I thought, this is great, except what if you had had a stroke and you couldn't use the right side of your body? The grab bar's on the wrong side. And so again, that goes back to this personalized concept of the person, the environment, their strengths and their abilities. And so grab bar placement is really important. The other one is heights of toilets. And so, heights of anything as you get older, some of the first muscles that start to weaken are sort of our quads. And so, it's not necessarily for the sitting down, but it's the standing up. And so, the higher something is, the easier it is to be independent in going from sitting to standing. And so, one of the things I was thinking about are what are some of the things that people don't like that we're really reluctant to use. And one of those things are raised toilet seats because they look really medical. And so, but they can be just a temporary measure. But what are the things that people love? It's their raised toilet seat once they've used it for a while because they understand how much easier it is to have those private moments to yourself as long as you can. The good news is that there are some design features. So if you're buying a toilet, there's actually higher heights that you can purchase. There's lower heights and higher heights. And so even those concepts about future planning, thinking about if you're even just having to replace a toilet, getting the taller height ones, it's just a couple of inches, but it makes a big difference. I think the other thing I would suggest is the heights of your sink matters. And so if you can actually think about if you're designing from scratch and you have an opportunity to make it so that you could sit at the sink. So sometimes having two different sinks, one if you're standing and one if you're sitting, ideally, if you really, really think about how committed you are to aging in place, if you end up in a wheelchair, the ability to roll up to your sink and to use a faucet that has um, a longer lever to turn on and off. Those are things that you down the road would really love to have. Think about it after you've had the flu and you take that first shower. It's pretty tiring. So, wouldn't it be great if you could put a chair out to your vanity and do your morning routine sitting? So, heights of the toilets, grab bars are important, walk in showers, lighting is important. You don't want things with shadows, brightness matters.
Lighting has come a long way. Is that one of the kind of an affordable upgrade that could start this process? Deb, let's talk about lighting and where you see it being important and it being a bit of a maybe a first step.
Yeah, absolutely. So lighting has come a long way, and as a mom of two teenagers, they both went through a phase where they insisted on LED lighting, these lighting strips that could decorate their rooms and they could be controlled by their phones and to change the colors. And funny enough, that's actually one of the first steps that's quite easy to do in a person's environment. So LED strips under the bed, you can get them, from Amazon that are easily they're sort of motion detected so that when you stand up at night and you go to the bathroom, you don't have to flip on all the lights, but you have some wayfinding on the way back and you can see where your bed is, right? So even just those LED strips, a lot of them can be voice activated or activated by your smartphone, so that it's really important and that you don't risk tripping. Very easy first step. Probably the first recommendations that most occupational therapists make into improving the safety of a home is to get rid of throw rugs, things that you could trip over. So the lighting and if you can't get rid of the carpeting, the throw rug because it's very important, then make sure that they're backed with a plastic, a rubber matting so that they don't wiggle around. And even if you can tape down the edges, again, not pretty, but those are some of the things that we think about and why do we need the lighting? Well, we need the lighting so that you can avoid falling. And so let's also on that first tranche of things that we can do also look at removing clutter and things that you may trip over.
Is there anything in the bedroom that should be considered? Height of bed?
Yep, same concept as a toilet because your quadricep muscles are still going to need the help to get up. So a lot of times we just suggest raising the bed, making the bed at a height that is high enough. And it's easy enough with bed blocks that you can buy that go under each corners. But if you're buying a new bed, you can consider also making sure that you're getting a bed that's high enough so that at least when you're sitting with your feet on the floor, your knees are at 90 degrees, but if not, a little bit higher. You, of course, want to make sure you don't need a step stool to get onto your bed, but the height of the bed, I think, would be the first piece of it. And then also, of course, I love the lighting, motion activated LED lighting under your bed is a really great one. again, moving the throw rugs. Just to say again, to go back to the lighting. So putting the LED lighting under your bed if possible, having it motion detected as possible, but also having a light switch by your bed so that when you turn off the lights at night, you don't have to then maneuver in the dark to find your bed.
There's nothing I love more on this program than a very, very actionable, practical tip. Okay. Anything around, I don't know, anything around pillows or like bedding or anything like that? Or is that
I would say though that having some pillows to help support you in a side lying position. I also am prone to injuries, and so when my shoulder hurts, being able to have a number of throw pillows around that I could position to help with comfort at night is very helpful. A lot of seniors also have to consider whether or not they get a sleep apnea. It's very common as we get older. And so those are things talking to your family doctor about and having sleep studies can really help make sure. Some of those signs are things like snoring,
mm,
and having that investigated is important. And the reason I say that is because sometimes elevating your head, elevating you like up to 30 degrees is really helpful. And you could do that by pillows. Some people like to have a bed that actually has the controls that can maneuver it. But I like to have extra pillows around so that I can be a little bit elevated, especially when I'm not feeling well and I'm sick, but also if you have respiratory conditions.
excellent? Okay. So bathroom check, bedroom check, kitchen. Is there anything we can do to adapt kitchens to still have seniors cooking safely and confidently and just extend that aspect of their life?
Absolutely. Flooring is a big one. So if you're standing on beautiful tile, it's harder on your back, it's harder on your joints, especially for longer periods of time. So when you're building a home or renovating a home, considering the flooring underneath you really matters. Because the other thing that people do is they end up putting mats in their kitchen. And we don't love mats because it can be a false risk. But some of them can be useful. I'll tell you what I had suggested, which was when my kids were little, we had these big foam puzzle pieces that we created these environments that the kids could play on. And then I actually realized some of those could be used in a kitchen because it gives a little bit of padding when you're standing, but you have to tack it down to make sure that they don't come up and you don't slip on it. But they're also easily wipeable when you drop things on it. So the matting is a really big piece that can help. The lighting is really important in your kitchen as well. Some of the things that I find interesting is that there are stoves designs that are different. So there are stoves that have the dials really sort of at the back of the stove. If you think about a one-piece stove and oven, oftentimes they're at the back, and so you have to be able to reach. Well, a person who's shorter, my grandmother was quite petite, under 5 feet, and so for her, leaning over a hot stove to change the dial on an oven could have been a problem. Thankfully, my grandfather was quite a bit taller, and they lived together until she was in her late 80s, and so that was always wonderful to have him, but if she was living alone and she's still under 5 feet, that's a problem. And so I laugh a little bit because you can have the dials at the front of the stove, but typically that's something that people with kids don't want because little kids can walk up and touch it. So it's at a different age and stage in life. As to when you think about that, I think the other thing to think about is the type of fridge you have and what you use your fridge for. So, fridge and freezer combinations, if you're not really using your freezer that much, then putting it on the bottom so that you can have your fridge at height of your eyes is better than the opposite, where your fridge at the bottom portion and then you're constantly having to kneel down or squat down to get things off the bottom shelf. So, those are little considerations.
I love that consideration. I'm just going to ask you, is that typically the case for seniors that they are not using their freezer as much and using their fridge more?
It really depends on the person. I would say a lot of people like meal delivery, get it once a week and it goes in the freezer and then you have to pull it out. So if you're that type of person, then that's great. If you're more of a fresh food delivery or you still love to do your own cooking, So it's really going to be, again, person dependent. I'm a big fan of the fridge on top. Just because eye level. I think the other thing I would say with fridges, and it's interesting, it's one of the cognitive tests we do with seniors when we're ascertaining a capacity. One of the questions is, how would you know if food has spoiled? Right? So the answers are, we're sitting here thinking, well, it's obvious the smell of it, the color of it, the look of it. Food spoils. So the idea that when you open your fridge and everything's at a height that you can see is really important, because if you're not, then you could be eating food that is no longer appropriate to eat. And that's actually one of the most common reasons why families start to realize that their parents might be failing.
Here's something that I've always struggled with. And frankly, I struggled with it with my mom and dad when they were building the bungalow because they were living in a 3-story townhouse before that. And you've used the phrase use it or lose it. So, where do you find the right time that it's like stairs in particular, it's no longer a use it or lose it, it's more of a risk. Do you know what I mean? Because I was like, well, do you guys need to be in a bungalow now? Like, what if not using stairs, not having stairs means that that makes you incapable of using stairs? How do you know when it's the right time, I guess, Deb?
Again, very person dependent. So I had the opportunity to shadow one of our physiotherapists here at work. She was treating an individual who was in his early 90s and had had a hip infection and was getting ready to go home. And his daughter was retiring so that she could live with him and take care of him. And he had 14 stairs that he had to go up to get to the second floor, which is where the bathroom was. And we were working on stairs with him, and he was getting there. So it's not a use it or lose it forever. You definitely, it's just going to take you a lot longer to get back. And this gentleman, post infection, did get back home with the 14 stairs to go up and down. But again, I'll use my parents as an example. My dad had had multiple knee surgeries and a spine surgery and shoulder surgeries. And at a certain point, it was just enough that after every surgery, it was hard. It was hard on him, and it was also hard on my mom for the first few weeks to have to carry everything up and down for him. And so the question was why? Why are we doing that? Why wouldn't we live in an environment where, my dad can go up and down stairs. He comes to my house for dinner all the time. But on an everyday basis and after a surgery or two a year, it just became a point where it was, why are we doing this? And so it's going to be different for every person. I will say that in your 70s, 80s, when we look at people who end up in a nursing home, the majority of people in nursing homes and even retirement homes are crisis based. They didn't plan on it, they didn't want to, but something happened. And so it's really about contemplating, if something happened, what's my plan? And so I like to say, if my plan is I never want to be in an institution, then I'm going to do it sooner rather than later so that when I have that crisis, I can come back to my own environment.
Okay, perfect tee up for where I want to go next because we've covered the practicalities. Now, what are some things caregivers should look at that modifications for the home are imminent?
I would say that it is not always in the scope of the caregiver to know what they need and know what they don't need. That is why the the occupational therapists in their lives are probably key. And so, again, thinking back into my own environment and with my own family, there have been moments where I've made a suggestion. My parents aren't going to love this, but they'll understand where my mother will say, well, I already said that. And he's not listening to me. And then I'll say it. And I don't know if it's because I'm the daughter or it's because by training, I'm an occupational therapist, that now it's all of a sudden a better idea. And so I think sometimes as caregivers, we're so enmeshed in it. And sometimes our loved ones don't listen to us, even when we know what we know. And so sometimes having those conversations with your your primary care provider, who can lead you in a direction of maybe having a therapist, an OT, and even physiotherapists are well versed in modifying homes, that can come and look at maybe making some suggestions about what we need to think about. Social workers as well. There's a lot of different aging agencies and a lot of different resources out there. But I think we rely so heavily on our caregivers, but nobody gets caregiver training. So I don't know that our caregivers always know. I think they'll know where they're having difficulty. I think it's opening up that space to have a conversation to say, what are you seeing in the house that's giving you concern? And so they may see things and asking structured questions to get there. But I don't know that always our caregivers are thinking in that way. They have a lot on their plates.
I love what you just said there, that we rely so much on our caregivers, but they don't have training for this role in their life. Becoming a caregiver more times than not comes into your life when you don't expect to have that extra responsibility. What do you wish people knew about caregiving?
It's hard and it's not short. If everything goes well, it's a multi-year endeavor, and you don't have to do it alone, and you need to rely on other people, and you need to be able to ask for help because you don't know everything and you didn't get all the training, because these are health professionals whose career it is. And so I think as a caregiver, learning how to ask for help is your biggest strength that you can develop, and giving yourself grace to know that you can't do it all and it's okay to take breaks. And one caregiver can't be the be all and end all to one person's success. You need to build a network of people to help in the support.
I love that so very, very much. Thank you for that. I think many, many people are going to need to hear that, and I hope they do. I hope they really do hear it. So, an occupational therapist seems like something we should all have in our lives. How does somebody find an occupational therapist, and how do they introduce the question to an occupational therapist of how do I help a senior in my life, or even plan for my own aging in place?
So, not being paid as an occupational therapist, so I feel like I absolutely can share this. So, the first thing is, as a regulated health profession, occupational therapy has a college. The purpose of the College of Occupational Therapy is to protect the public. So if you go on the College of Occupational Therapy website, coto.org, there, I believe, is a button that says find an occupational therapist. So that's one easy way to do it. Ontario Health at Home is an agency that is part of our socialized healthcare system that's meant to help people in the home. And they have occupational therapists as well. And referrals can be from your primary care provider, or even you can call Ontario Health at Home and look on their website. How can you get an occupational therapist to come into your home to do a home safety assessment? And sometimes it's just a one or two visit, one initial assessment where they go through your home, they talk to you, what's important to you, and can make recommendations, and then can help facilitate getting the equipment they're suggesting into you. And then they come in and do another assessment and evaluation. And so sometimes that actually sparks other identification of need. Maybe it's a suggestion that maybe it's time to also consider a walker when you're out in public, in busy environments. Maybe you're fine at home, but things to otherwise start to think about. So the other thing I would say is most private agencies also have occupational therapists available. So even just a Google occupational therapist near me, and you would get a plethora of resources.
Does OHIP cover occupational therapists?
Sometimes. So when you are receiving occupational therapy services in a hospital setting, it is absolutely covered. When you're leaving a hospital setting and your hospital team feels that you would benefit from it in order to transition home safely, they will put in a referral, and Ontario Health at Home will provide an occupational therapist for you. Most hospitals in Ontario now also have a hospital to home program where the hospital can make that recommendation directly to a provider, also covered. So in those cases, that is covered. If you're at home and you are listening to this and thinking, oh, I want to get on this planning adventure to think about how can I stay at home longer, it's probably not covered. But I will still suggest that it is probably valued for money. And some insurance companies, if you have extended health benefits, may also cover it. So think about that. Think about the investment in your future. You can claim it. An occupational therapist that you or any of your healthcare benefits that you have to pay out of pocket for, there is space on your tax return to add them all up. And sometimes you can get a tax benefit. So keep your receipts.
Love that. Do you know of any other funding supports or tax credits available to Canadians that they can be aware of?
There are definitely savings related to renovating your home. And I would say they change all the time. I would go ahead and talk to your friendly occupational therapist.
What is one mind shift that you wish people, society would have towards their lifestyle to allow them to age in place?
One of my favorite Peloton instructors said the following phrase, and it really resonated with me. So I've always said, aging is a privilege. And she added, getting stronger is a choice. So aging is a privilege, getting stronger is a choice. And I love that because it doesn't just mean physical strength. It doesn't just mean to me cognitive strength, but even in the planning phases, it needs to be a deliberate decision how you're going to plan this next phase of your life. It's not just going to happen. You're not just going to coast where you currently are. There are physiological changes that are going to happen to all of us if we're lucky. And we really need to be smart about making plans so that we can live our life the way we choose.
If somebody's listening today and wants to future proof their home, what's the very first step?
For me, the first thing people need to do is start to declutter their home. And also, if you are going to consider moving or downsizing, that's always really helpful to have it done now, right? So declutter your home. Think about as you're going through your day to day activities, where are things a little bit tricky for me? And is there anything that I can do about it? So when you asked me about homes, we talked about washrooms, kitchens, bedrooms. We did not talk about front entranceways, having a chair that you could sit down on to take your shoes on and off, a long handled shoehorn to help get your shoes on and off. I also like to put chairs at the tops of stairs if that's if you have a long set of stairs so you can sit down, or even at the doorway to your bedroom, because most falls happen in sight of where you're trying to go. And people think, oh, I'm almost there. So I like to have a few seating surfaces so people can stop and rest as you need. So as you're thinking about where am I finding things difficult, another one we didn't talk about are laundry rooms. So washers and dryers, you can get razors for them so that they're higher up. So again, you're not bending down to try to get that one red sock that's at the back of your dryer. And so just as you go about your day, start to think about where are there little points where things are a little bit difficult, and start to think about or even just write them down. And then if you can't figure out the solution, because a lot of it's common sense, then also think about who can I talk to help me sort through how to make these easier for myself.
I love that. Is there one greatest risk? Is there one thing that it's like, let's just change this now?
I'm sure other people may have a different opinion. I would say it really depends on the person. So, yeah, I could say, throw rugs, but if you don't have any, but what you do have is a ton of extension cords and chargers for everything, you're going to trip over one of those, then for you that would be that, right? So, I think it really is going to be very person dependent.
Right. I do end every episode, and you did kind of intimate this earlier, but Deb, how can we better support caregivers?
I think the first and most important thing that I always do is say thank you right up front. If you're a healthcare provider, we need to say thank you to our caregivers. We have an unpaid workforce that is unrecognized. and they are alone. Often we see elements of social isolation in the caregivers. They aren't able to take the time for themselves. So, saying thank you to our caregivers, asking how can we support you in the work that you're doing to take care of this person. Sometimes that's about developing opportunities for respite, so that this caregiver can take an hour walk. It really depends on what the nature is of the work that they're doing. But I think that as a healthcare system, we have to recognize that the caregivers do so much of the labor that our system can't afford to do. Really, really recognizing that caregivers are putting another person first, and we need to also, as a healthcare system, start to think about how we can support the caregivers in the work that they do.
Yeah. I said to your colleague, Dr. Adriana Schnell, I'm so grateful to live in a city where Baycrest exists. I think that what you're doing around caregiving and everybody who works there that I've had the opportunity to talk with are really changing lives in such a positive way in a really complicated and stressful time for so many. So thank you so much, Deb, for what you're doing and leading that organization because I am so grateful and I've learned so much. So thank you. And thanks so much for being on the heart of it all.
Really, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
That was a master class. I will be referencing that episode a ton, and I'm sure you and your loved ones will be too. Thanks to our sponsor, capitaldirect.ca. This is a great episode to share widely. Such great tips from Deb Galet at Baycrest, and I want an occupational therapist on speed dial. Thanks to my co-producers, Jess and Carrie from 6 of 1 Digital. Thanks for your follows and comments. We love to see them. And please always reach out on our social channels. We are on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at The Heart of It All Pod. And there's also our YouTube channel where you can catch all of our videos. There's some really great ones there because boy, oh boy, we've been doing a lot here at The Heart of It All. Thanks so much for listening. And as always, please take care. This week's movie recommendation is a really fun one. I actually watched it with my mom. It's called The Thursday Murder Club, and it has some of the best in it. Pierce Brosnan, Helen Mirren, Sir Ben Kingsley, and it was directed by Chris Columbus, who directed some of your favorite movies in the 80s and 90s. It's based on a really popular book, and it is about a group of seniors living in a retirement community who come together to solve murders, but they have relationships with their adult children and with each other. It's tons of fun. It's on Netflix.